This is R0win, and today I'm going to be doing a Steve tier list because I haven't done one of these. I think the last time I did it, I never recorded it, but it was like a year ago almost, I'd say. And I think that I am obligated to make one after I've been playing this character since he came out, and I think that it is about time I made one. So I think let's get started, shall we? So, in my opinion, I think that Steve's best matchup in the entire game is going to be, with no surprise, King K. Rool. So, K. Rool is very fat. He has no options to really get out of Steve's combos. He has frame 4 air dodge, frame 4 in air. Those are his fastest options to get out of combos. But at the same time, he doesn't really have much to do neutral. Yes, he has Fair and he has Blunderbuss. And at the same time, Blunderbuss is the only thing that he can really do to kind of counter minecart. Like counter goes through it, but yeah, but blunderbuss, if K. Rool hits Steve with blunderbuss, it sends him towards him instead of away. So K. Rool can actually hit an upper off of it. But at the same time, the cons of the Steve Carroll matchup heavily outweigh the pros of the matchup for K. Rool. Like, because K. Rool's fat, he's slow, doesn't have very good out of shield options, doesn't have very good neutral. Like, because like if Steve is just mashing up tilt on K. Rool's shield, K. Rool really can't do much at all in that situation. Like, yes, he can nair, but at the same time, Steve can just move under him and hit his back instead. So K. Rool is Steve's best matchup, and in my opinion, I think one of K. Rool's worst. So I think next I'm going to put uh Shocker, but Bowser. Bowser at the same time has the same cons as K. Rool, but instead he has a good out of shield option. He has good range to deal with blocks. Because like a lot of the time against heavies, Steve's gonna be going in, so he's not gonna have many resources. But at the same time, if he just sits back behind a wall and mines, a lot of the time heavies don't have the easiest time dealing with them. Like a lot of characters in the +2 category don't have much to deal with blocks. And in my opinion, I think Bowser is just more of a combo food because he's heavier, so he has easier time getting hit by just up tilt strings, up tilt ladders, and most of the time he's just gonna die off of just getting blocked, like just putting 2 blocks on the ledge to where he can't get up. He has to go around it, and he's just gonna die for it, like 90% of the time. But I feel like the two things that Bowser has in the Steve Bowser matchup is a very like one of the best out of shield options in the game with up B. Because if Steve touches his shield with up tilt, he's getting up beat for it. Because Bowser up B out of shield is like a top 5 out of shield option. And also Flame Breath. No, not Flame Breath. Fair. Fair is insane. It's an up air. It's a forward air. It's a down air as well for some reason. It hits so far in front of him. But again, the cons in the Bowser Steve matchup outweigh the pros. So again, another heavy goes into +2 category. And next might be a little bit of a I wouldn't say weird, but I would definitely say that Steve wins the matchup. I'd say pretty confidently, and that's Puff. This is one of, if not like the worst matchup in the game. But at the same time, I feel like Base Mage has been proving this matchup is not as bad as like everyone thought. Like it's definitely a bad matchup. It is such a bad matchup, but it's not as bad as what people thought at the start. Like when this character first came out, and how Steve could just not let Puff land without smash, and just not let Puff really do anything with the kill power of Diamond with like up to Bear killing at like 50. But it's a bad matchup. Puff is super light, super floaty, can get comboed super easily. Like nil ladders are super easy to hit on Puff because of how floaty she is. But at the same time, Puff can just crouch and not get hit by up tilt. But at the same time, Steve can just adapt and just F tilt, jab, whatever. But Steve is gonna be killing Puff so early. it doesn't make any. It's so insane about how early Steve can kill Puff with up smash, with back air, with forward smash. Also at the same time, Puff can edge guard Steve when it comes to just going low and going to the ledge, because Puff can just nair into fair and then into imagination, because Steve can't do much when Puff is kind of just chilling off stage and Steve's trying to recover. Steve really can't do that much unless he's going super high above Puff. And if he does, then most of the time he can get away with it if the Puff is super far off stage and you just elytra back to stage. But I feel like Steve 100% wins that matchup, but it can definitely be a struggle if you don't know the matchup that well. And then I think another +2 matchup is going to be Shocker Ganondorf. I feel like all these heavies, I feel like the heavies should be like ordered, but Steve definitely beats Ganon. I don't feel like I had to explain too much about this. Ganon sucks. He's slow, has a pretty shitty recovery, but yes, he gets comboed easy. He's fat. He has no out of shield options. His nair is like the only good thing. I mean, in that matchup, literally the only good thing he has is nair. Except for that, it's so bad. It's such a bad matchup. Ganon legit can't move, like, at all. It doesn't make any sense on why you would ever pick Ganon to Steve. And if you did, you're just asking to kind of just die and lose the matchup in like a minute. But yeah, it's Ganon. The best character versus the worst character. The worst character is not gonna have fun at all against Steve. So then I think another +2 matchup would be, I think I get Doc 100%. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of low tiers in +2, which is a shocker to absolutely no one, I think. But I think that Doc again has like legit the exact same struggles that Ganon has. He's slow. He has a really shitty recovery, but at the same time, he has like a top 5 projectile with Pill. But at the same time, that's not gonna be very good against Steve. He just builds a wall, puts one block above it, and he can't really get hit by Pill. But I'm trying to think about like what else Doc can do in the matchup. I mean, like he has frame 3 up, he got a shield, because like he can't. The thing that Doc can do compared to all these other characters except for Bowser is he can get Steve off of him with up B, because that's a frame 3 out of shield option, and Doc having a frame 3 up B is legit broke. It's so good. He has a legit thing. I'm pretty sure he has one of the fastest out of shield options in the entire game when it comes to like frame 3 out of shield, because like Game & Watch is also up B. Game & Watch's up B is also frame 3, but I feel like Doc again the cons outweigh the pros in the matchup, because Doc doesn't have many pros when it comes to just fighting Steve, because he's fat, he's slow, he's gonna get edge guarded by blocks, he's gonna get edge guarded by down tilt, down smash. He's just gonna get destroyed when it comes to fighting Steve. If you're a Doc main and you're fighting Steve, pick another character. And then the next +2, I don't feel like there's actually gonna be that many in +2. There's gonna be a few, but it's gonna be just gonna be like low tiers. Again, +2 DDD. There, like I feel like every heavy except like maybe 2 is gonna be in. I think I'm pretty sure every heavy is gonna be in like the +2, +1, +1.5 category against Steve. DDD, in my opinion, is the worst character in the game. Like if I was doing a tier list on every character, I put DDD at the bottom. He's fat, he's slow. He has 6 jumps and has a good distance recovery, but at the same time, it's pretty easily 2 frameable, and his jumps barely go anywhere. Like he has multiple jumps, but at the same time they're super slow, and he's so fat. He legit puffs up whenever he jumps, and it's so easy for Steve to combo him. Like all the fat heavies, he can down tilt string. He can do down tilt into down tilt and then into up tilt ladders, which does like 90%, and it can lead to death on DDD. Because DDD gets destroyed by blocks off stage. You put 2 blocks at the ledge, he bonks on them every time, no matter the resource. It's it's insane about how good Steve does in DDD. I think Sora and Steve are some of DDD's worst matchups, but there really isn't much to be said. DDD sucks. Steve is broken, but but yeah. And then I think I'm trying to think the last +2 that I would say Steve has is I'd say Sheik. Sheik is super. She kind of has the same cons as Puff in the fact to where I think that she dies so early. She gets edge guarded by blocks heavily. She doesn't have much to do with blocks, and the only way she really can do with blocks safely is with side B, the little grenade thing. That's a pretty good way, but at the same time, Steve can jump over the block and then just back her for it because it has a hell of a lot of end lag. And she's just super light. She gets edge guarded. Like Steve is gonna get comboed to like 50, but at the same time, you can just sit back behind a wall and camp, and Sheik really can't do much in neutral. But Sheik, Sheik is super duper light. I'm gonna say that so much when I'm talking about Sheik, but she's so light. She really can't kill Steve because if Steve has a wall behind him, she's not gonna be able to kill him unless it's off the top with like an up air. But if he just builds like a little house, Sheik, it's like impossible for Sheik to kill him because of how weird her kill power is. Their only kill move is like up smash, bouncing fish, but because like Steve's gonna get hit by nair bouncing fish no matter what. But in that entire matchup, Steve is just overall Sheik's worst matchup. She can't approach. Sheik dies to bear so easily. She dies to getting edge guarded so easily. She's actually pretty comboable when it comes to like pick loops for some reason, but at the same time, her hurt box shifting is actually insane. You can't edge guard Sheik, and like the only character that can is Steve with blocks. But Sheik does not do that. Does not do good into Steve. She overall just gets absolutely destroyed by Steve in the matchup. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I have 2 more +2s that I can put here. And the next +2, who could have thought? Lil Mac. Don't really got to say much about Mac. It's Little Mac. He's the second worst character in the game off of the official tier list. He can't be in the air, and if he's in the air, Steve can edge guard Mac like it's like you're stealing candy from a baby. Like he places a block, he side B's, yes, but then up B, Steve down smash and down tilt are some of Little Mac's worst nightmares when it comes to just doing anything to Little Mac. But also he's pretty comboable. But at the same time, whenever Steve is comboing Little Mac, he does have up B, which up B out of any like frame 1 invincibility out of a combo. So if Steve isn't frame perfect with his combos, he's gonna get hit by him. And like he's gonna get hit by the up B if the Steve isn't careful. But if the Steve just baits out the up B, Steve can punish Mac so easily and just kill him off a one hit. Steve lands one grab and like 90% of the time can kill him off a one hit because of how bad his in-air game is, how bad just his overall airspeed is. I just overall think that Mac does not do good in a Steve whatsoever. And then I will say the next, and I'm trying to look at it. Yeah, the last and final +2 of Steve is Mewtwo. Mewtwo has the issues of being super duper light and also has the con of being super fat. I feel like fat characters, like super wide characters that are light, struggle so much against Steve. Like Mewtwo is the prime example of that. Being the same weight as like Puff, Pikachu, Game & Watch, Mewtwo does not do all that good into Steve. Like he has Fair as a poking tool, which is actually his Fair is actually super good. But also like he has Bear to kill Steve out of Minecart. But if it's a powered minecart, it goes through back air, which, in my opinion, is kind of a deal breaker in that matchup. He also edge guards Mewtwo. He teleports every teleport recovery with blocks so super well. The only one he doesn't is like maybe Zelda, but at the same time it's Zelda and Zelda sucks. So, but Mewtwo, he's light, he's really thick, so he's gonna get up tilt. He's gonna get up tilt chain and be killed at 40 or 50% with Diamond. But at the same time, even without Diamond, he's still gonna die super early to just nil ladders. Because you only got to do like one or two, if even two, only just one. But in that matchup is because from personal experience, because I have a Mewtwo player who goes to my local, that matchup is not good for Mewtwo whatsoever offline. Online, I feel like Steve is harder to play online. If you're a technical Steve, you're gonna have an easier time online. But if you're a fundamental Steve, you're gonna have a harder time online. But like matchups that are better online than offline, like a lot of offline matchups become, I'd say, more doable for some characters online. But at the same time, this is just overall and not online nor offline. And this is also just my personal opinion. But yeah, Mewtwo is not a good matchup into Steve whatsoever, in my opinion. So now on to the plus 1.5s. And I would say I'm going to start this off with Isabel. Now, my personal opinion is that I think that Isabel has Fair, she has Bear, she has Lloyd Rocket, and also she has, I would say, one of the better gimping tools being Fishing Rod, with Fishing Rod being able to catch Elytra like most every time, and also Bear and Fair getting Steve out of minecart every single time. When it comes to it is one of the most consistent ways to get Steve out of minecart with like Fair and Bear. And I feel like I should just talk about these two characters in the exact same tier because they are both plus 1.5. I think that Villager and Isabel, Villager is more of a camping matchup because Villager really can't do much but block except like Lloyd Rocket, F tilt, or dash attack. But at the same time, Steve can just keep camping and just keep building walls, and Villager can't approach. Isabel, on the other hand, if you're doing the 3 blocks under a platform, Isabel can just Fishing Rod over and then scoop you up and just get you completely out of the walls. But at the same time, they get edge guarded so easily by Steve. His Fair, if you hit the balloons with a Fair and you're spaced properly, you're going to spike them 100% of the time. Because the extended hitbox lets Steve spike them so easily. But no, Lloyd Rocket, like the Isabel's Lloyd Rocket, in my opinion, is worse into the Steve matchup. But Isabel or Villager's Lloyd Rocket is way better into the Steve matchup because of the fact that it's a moving projectile and they can just bait Steve because like a lot of the time he'll just shield and then build a wall. But like Fair and Bear are like really just annoying poking tools. Not really even poking, it's just annoying ranged options that are really good against Steve. Not really good, but just annoying for a Steve player. But yeah, Steve wins that match 100%, but it can 100% be annoying to play, especially online. Those matchups are, in my opinion, heavily really annoying. Really annoying. The next matchup I think is plus 1.5 is... Sorry. I do think that Lucas is a plus 1.5. I'm saying that because I think a lot of people might disagree with me on this. Because of Regalo, what he did to Yanni and Waidu at SmashCon 2022. But also, Steve players weren't really, I'd say, like fully developed yet into that matchup. Because no one played played or plays Lucas. I mean, I don't think I can't really name a top Lucas player except for like Bubs. Bubs is like the only like top Lucas player I can name. Or like Nighthawks. But a lot of time they don't really fight Steve, but whenever they do, it's like Crep Soleil, it's Syrup. And that matchup is low-key so bad. Like, yet again, I feel like a lot of characters in the plus 1.5 are going to be super annoying to fight because they're like projectile characters. But at the end of the day, Steve wins like beats a lot of zoners, but there's like some zoners that are like even or like I'd say like only like 1 or 2 is minus. But at the same time, Steve can just place a wall, can camp, and can zone harder. But a lot of Steves don't really like doing that all that much. They want to get, like, especially online, they're going to want to get in your face and actually just beat the shit out of you off of one hit, like every Steve does. But Steve 100% beats Lucas, edge guards Lucas, combos him super duper easily. It's very easy to get pick loops on floaty characters, which is why Villager is here. Which is why Villager, which is why Isabel and Lucas are all here. And in my opinion, I think that Lucas just has a harder time dealing with all of Steve's shit compared to his counterpart Ness. But we'll get to Ness later. But no, Lucas doesn't really have much to deal with Steve, just kind of mashing on a shield. He doesn't really. I mean, he has Nair at the same time. Up till we'll just trade with Nair, and Steve can kind of, I'd say, get a lot off of that. Not a lot, but he can get some pretty good damage. Like he get that traded up till into fair or something like that, and get just quite a lot of damage off of just spamming up till on a shield. But I do think that Lucas is a plus 1.5 for Steve. Another character I think is a plus 1.5 is going to be Pac-Man. This matchup is played super duper campy, but Pac-Man has, like, he has Key, he has Bell, but at the same time, Steve 90% of the time is just going to be building a wall and camping under a platform the whole time. Because, like, what does Pac-Man do? He can throw a Bell over, but it's just going to get stopped at the platform. And if there is no platforms, and it's like FD, or it's Town, where there isn't any platforms, he can just build a platform above him. And, like, Pac-Man has F-Smash that can go through blocks, but at the same time, Steve F-Smash outranges that, and he can just punish Pac-Man for even trying to touch his blocks. So, a lot of the time, this matchup is played super campy. Pac-Man also has a hard time getting back to stage against Steve, with side B being stopped by blocks, and even if side B breaks him, he can just place more against his up B, and just kind of just keep down tilting or down smashing against Pac-Man. But overall, Pac-Man does not do very well neutral. Again, Pac-Man doesn't do that well into what I'd say just characters that play their own game, like Steve, like Rob. But I'm not a Pac-Man expert, but this matchup is, I'd say, very good for Steve, but it's not +2 because Pac-Man still has, I would say, attributes that can be good in the matchup. Like I say, fair, but also, I'd say Hydrant can also be kind of an issue because that also hits blocks and actually does a pretty decent damage. So he can do Hydrant and then chuck a fruit through your blocks like Key, or you can or Orange or something. But Pac-Man does have some stuff. But overall, Steve just absolutely demolishes Pac-Man in the matchup. But yeah, that is Pac-Man. I'd say the next plus 1.5 is, I would say, Pichu. Actually, you know what? No, we're going to put Pichu up here. We're going to put Pichu +2. Sorry I skipped on Pichu, but Pichu's super light. His T-Jones don't go over blocks. They just break on blocks, which sometimes can be good if it's dirt, but if it's stone, it's not good at all. But also, Pichu can actually get, like, jab trained and pick looped. I'd say kind of easy. But also, you only need to land, like, one pick loop into F smash, and it kills Pichu off of the side, and it kills so incredibly early. Like, Pichu is so light. I feel like every light character does okay into Steve. Or, like, there's only, like, 1 or 2 that do okay. All the others are just, they die so quick off of, like, one advantage state from Steve. And the light character is just going to get eviscerated in one jab train and not going to be able to do basically anything in the matchup. But neutral of this matchup is just Steve building a wall and Pichu not being able to approach him. Because at the same time, he doesn't have that much range. Like, he has fair, he has bear. But Pichu is super aggressive, and Steve can kind of just cancel out that aggression by building a wall. Like, even if it's just too high, he can just cancel out all the momentum that Pichu has. So, sorry I skipped down on Pichu for +2, but I just realized that he was there. So, another plus 1.5 is Inkling. Inkling is the character where I feel like Inkling is very underrated, but also she went from the top of the top, being like the best character in the game, back to like a mid tier. But this matchup is so incredibly bad because like Inkling can win neutral when it comes to like just destroying blocks because she has down B. Down B can destroy blocks from a safe distance, and you can kind of approach then. But also, you're far enough away to where Steve can just place another block, or not another block, another wall. But Steve in this matchup places 2 blocks against the stage under the ledge. Inkling bunks every single time, no matter the height, no matter the distance. And Inkling also has weird hurtbox shifting with just dashing around with the dashing animation. And I would say Steve has one of the better options to actually deal with that with dash attack and jab, and be able to get a combo off of it depending on how the Inkling reacts to it. But Inkling, she's also like kind of light. She's decently light, so she dies kind of early. But no, the main reason why this matchup is really good is just edge guarding with blocks and Inkling not being able to make it back to stage whatsoever. Like, yeah, she has a splat animation, whatever, she lands with her up B. But if she lands on the 2 blocks on the ledge, Steve doesn't get hit by it whatsoever. Even if he's standing right on the ledge, he doesn't get hit by it. But Inkling just gets destroyed in this matchup when it comes to just being off stage. If Inkling is off stage, and you're Steve, and you're not like, if you're not providing off of that, I think is the word. If you're not making the most out of Inkling being off stage, you might get like destroyed neutral, but Inkling does not win the matchup in like any sort of format except destroying blocks with a decent projectile. Next, I would say that the next matchup is... I would say that there's only like 1 or 2 more. But I'm going to say Zelda. I'm going to say Zelda for the fact that... Zelda's not in +2 is because I think that Steve kind of struggles with zoners a little bit when it comes to just like everything being chucked at you at once. But Steve can kind of just build a wall. He camp for diamond, and then when he gets in, Zelda is most time just going to die. But like also, a lot of Steve players get triggered. I am included in that when it comes to fighting like really annoying characters like Zelda. But Zelda has like neutral B to deflect anvil landing. But at the same time, Zelda is so slow. She's very easy to edge guard. Like 2 block thing on the ledge. That is gonna catch Zelda every single time, no matter the matchup, or just like no matter the situation. And even if Zelda goes high and tries to fade to ledge, Zelda's gonna get F smashed or down smashed. But again, with a +1.5, the cons outweigh the pros by a significant amount in this matchup. And then I'd say another +1.5 is Kirby. Because Kirby, he's super light, doesn't have much range, and also if you're kind of camping, a lot of the time Kirby players will just go above your blocks and down B to try to mix you up for mining. But at the same time, you can just shield it and wait for the Kirby to get out of the rock. And Kirby just has no range to deal with Steve, but also like Kirby is that character that is, I'd say, easier to kill than Puff, just because of the fact that like Kirby most of the time is going to be like at a specific level to get by back air. Puff most of the time is either going to go high or just go straight to ledge. But also Kirby just can't deal with blocks like whatsoever. Like he can down tilt them, sure, but also F smash just punishes that like super duper easily. He's super light again, and also if Steve kind of puts blocks, kind of makes the Kirby panic into where he goes into a perfect scenario where Steve can just run up and fair him and spike him and make him waste all of his jumps and just kill him super easily. But again, another reason that's just the reason why Kirby Steve is bad. Just Kirby dies super easily, can kind of get gimped off of all of his jumps and his recoveries. So it's just slow, no range, but Kirby is not a good matchup in a Steve. And then I'd say another +1.5 is Ridley. Ridley, he's super fat, not even like heavy. He's really big. He's big and can get comboed pretty easily. When I say pretty easily, I mean very easily. He's like one of the only characters that can, I'd say, get hit by up smash ladders he can get like because Steve can do the up tilt train, do up smash on dirt block, jump up smash him again, and then jump up smash him again. He can up smash train Ridley better than any other character in the entire game, even better than like Carol and Bowser, because of how like big he is. He's just so insanely big. I think that he is not good into Steve. The only like good thing that Ridley has into Steve is edge guarding. Ridley can actually edge guard Steve. I think actually pretty good. Also, let's trap him with fireballs is actually a pretty good way to deal with Steve Elytra. Nair is one of the best edge guarding tools in the entire game. But again, this is another situation where the cons heavily outweigh the pros in the matchup. But like, if a Steve is losing to a Ridley, just start landing your up tilt ladders and up tilt combos and just combos in general, because Ridley can't do much about it because of how big he is. But if you're getting outplayed by a Ridley, just quit the game. No, I'm kidding. But it's definitely a matchup where if like a lot of these like plus matchups are like if you don't because some of them are weird characters like Isabel and Villager. If you don't know the matchup, it's gonna be kind of hard. But once you start camping more and not approaching them, you're gonna start winning the game. But yeah, Ridley is not a good matchup in a Steve whatsoever. And then I would say the last plus 1.5 is the Belmonts. Another zoner, kind of like Zelda, where like Steve is gonna get frustrated and try to get in a lot, but if the Steve doesn't get in like at all, and the Steve just needs to, as soon as the Steve get Diamond, the Belmonts are gonna lose because the Belmonts struggle so much on rushdown characters. Like I'd say one of the worst matchups like Game & Watch, because Game & Watch also has Bucket, reflects a lot of their projectiles, and then I just overall just also being off stage. Down tilt's very good at gifting them from their up B, and then blocks are also very good. But also, whenever it comes to the blocks, you gotta also realize about their tether. But also, down tilt catches their tether super easily. It's very easy to gimp Belmonts when it comes to the shitty recovery, because overall they just get gimped way too easily by Steve. They get gimped so easily. But actually, no, I would say that there is one more plus 1.5, and that plus 1.5 is going to be R0win. I don't have very much experience in the R0win matchup. Like, I just played the R0win matchup for the first time last night, actually. And I would say it's 100% doable for Steve if the Steve just camps. That matchup is 100% doable with just camping. But when the Steve gets in and overextends too much, the R0win is just going to arc fire, just going to up smash fair near you. But if the Steve is just camping for Diamond and kind of just sits back and doesn't approach that a lot that game, the Steve wins the matchup. And also R0win is, I'd say, very easy to combo when it comes to just getting hit by Steve. But Steve is just very good at, I'd say, kind of canceling out zoners with blocks. But yeah, R0win is not a good matchup in a Steve. And then I also say this is for real the last plus 0.5, and that's Ices. I would put Ices at +2, but this is definitely Ices' worst matchup. But in my opinion, I think Ices. Steve has a very good time separating the Ice Climbers, and I'd say that Ices overall can do some stuff to Steve, but again, the cons outweigh the pro. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put it +2 because Icy's not very any character that can separate the climbers really easily, like Rob, like Steve, like Sonic, and just a lot of like zoners like Min Min. But any character that can separate the climbers super easily is going to be a bad matchup into Ices. But Steve can separate them super easily with down tilt, with minecart. If ice climbers are shielding minecart, like powered minecart, in most of the time whenever you get hit, you can spot dodge. Nana gets hit by minecart every single time you hit Ices with shield. No matter how early you buffer the spot dodge, it still hits Nana no matter what, which is, in my opinion, like the best way to separate the climbers in the entire game. But the climbers are very bad in the Steve. But also, if you're losing to Ices, a lot of time it's just matchup inexperience, and also probably not doing so well at dealing with with just two characters at the same time. But Icy is a good matchup for Steve, and if you're losing the matchup, it's just matchup inexperience, in my opinion. So now I would say it's time to get on the plus ones. The plus ones, I would say, I'm gonna start off from the top. Actually, you know what? Plus one, Banjo. Banjo, that matchup is just camping, but that camping matchup, Banjo has good tools to deal with Steve. Grenade over the wall, kind of stop Steve mining, and they can kind of drop down an F smash through it. But also, he has a pretty actually safe tool to deal with it, to deal with walls, which being F tilt. Also, neutral B being good. Side B having iframes is also pretty good. It's kind of hard for Steve to edge guard Banjo, but also at the same time, if he has 2 blocks of ledge, it's wraps. But I'd say Banjo's zoning is actually not that bad against Steve. But also, this matchup is going to be played super duper campy. But also, I think Steve kind of thrives off more campy matchups. Because he can get diamond easily, he can get more powered minecarts, more anvils, more everything. But I feel like Banjo does have some sauce in the Steve matchup. And then I'd say another plus one is Fox. I don't feel like I gotta say too much about the Fox Steve matchup. The jab train killing Fox off one jab, killing him super easily off of like just jab and F smash with diamond, and mostly like everything else. But Fox can combo Steve kind of easily. Also with if Steve is like kind of mashing and just dropping anvil, he can reflect that. Also he can reflect TNT. If Steve does the TNT into triple wall setup, Fox is going to be able to just reflect the TNT and make it super duper easy for Steve and have a very hard time. But Steve overall just beats the shit out of Fox. He hits a down throw at 0, you're losing your stock, because also blocks are very hard to deal with and recover against as Fox, because that matchup is just overall not very good. Now I'd say another plus one is Falcon. Falcon is that character that I see Steve struggling against actually a decent amount, because a lot of the time they don't know how to deal with fast characters. Because Falcon is a character that needs to get in your face all the time, and he's super fast. He can do it. I'd say a lot of times he's like one of the few characters that can actually jump above walls and actually not get punished for it that hard. Because if Steve knows he's gonna do it, he's just gonna back air him over it, or down B or down air. But Falcon is that character that when Steve is trying to recover and minecarts, he can down air him and knee him out of that, and also up B command grab him out of that actually kind of easily. When I say kind of easily, I mean very easily. But I would say that Falcon is like Falcon. He can get edge guarded by Steve easily, but at the same time, on stage, Falcon is overall getting in Steve's face, comboing him to oblivion. And if Steve doesn't know how to deal with like Falcon's overwhelming pressure, Steve is gonna lose that matchup easily. So I'd say next plus one is, there's gonna be a lot of characters in plus one. I would say Piranha Plant. Piranha Plant, I feel like also Spargo has kind of proved that with Plant beating some Steve players. But I would say that Plant overall is a weird character. No one really knows how to fight Plant. And I'd say Patui is one of the better ways to deal with Elytra and Minecart. Because, like, if Plant is just holding Patui above, Steve can't up tilt Plant. Because the Patui is just going to fall and hit Steve. But the only thing that you can really do is chuck a minecart at him. But Plant is also kind of weird to combo because his weird hurtbox shifting, just because of how his hitboxes are. He's kind of weird to combo. He's also kind of heavy, but he's oddly heavy. His recovery is actually pretty gimpable. Blocks don't really do that. Like the 2 blocks at the ledge don't do that much. Depending if it's like dirt, it doesn't do anything. Wood, it can if it's like the last bit of his up B. But stone, that's where the matchup gets actually pretty bad. But I just say just I feel like it's just the weird, like the weirdness of Plant that Steve's can kind of struggle with, because no Steve's really fight Plant that often, but Plant is a +1 for Steve. Then I'd say the next +1 is, I'm trying to think here. I'd say Rosa. Rosa is super big. She's super light, and overall, Steve can kind of just shut down Luma super easily. If Steve hits Rosa away, Steve can just F smash or Luma and kill Luma in one hit, almost, I'd say. But Rosa, I feel like Alcola proves this at Super Smash Con 2023 with him 3-0ing Dabuz twice. But that matchup is also not. It's weird. Because if you don't know how to deal with Luma and you're not dealing with Luma as Steve, you're going to lose the matchup when it comes to just Rosa as a whole. But that matchup is definitely good for Steve. But I can see how some Steve players are going to struggle with the matchup. But I'd also say another +1 is DK. The reason I'm not putting him in +1.5 or +2 is because DK gets comboed to shit. I will say that. His disadvantage sucks. But DK has so many options to with all of Steve's shit. Back air out of my car, aerial up B against up tilt. Up air being able to go through anvil. Also down B through walls. If it's like a smaller stage and Steve doesn't have a wall like halfway up the stage, DK down B is gonna hit no matter what. Also like aerial, like grounded down B. And grounded down B can also deal with TNT from a safe distance. Just overall, DK's combo game and advantage state is like top tier. And like when DK is overwhelming you with pressure, Steve can't do all that much because of how how weird his combo game is, and how back air being able to go through minecart and air, being able to also go through minecart, grab going through like a lot of stuff. But when DK's fishing for back air and dash attack, a lot of the time Steve is going to struggle with that. But I feel like another heavy that kind of has the exact same, like, not reasons, but area of like heaviness that makes him good against, like, okay against Steve is Incin. Steve definitely beats Incin, but Revenge is a very good factor. Side B is also a good way to catch Elytra and Minecart. Revenging Minecart, revenging Anvil, revenging everything that Steve can throw out. But the only thing that he's lacking is a out of shield option. Incin has up B, but it's not the greatest out of shield option in the entire game. But I'd say Incin overall doesn't do that bad in Steve. Like, he gets combo at the same time he has Revenge that could just break him out of untrue Steve combos that some characters like K-Rool, like Bowser, like Ganon would get hit by. I'd say Incin is that struggle matchup, that struggle heavy that Steve actually does pretty well against. Now, and then I'd say for all three of these characters, they kind of fall under the exact same cons of each other, but all three of the links. I'd say that Adult Link gets. Actually, I'll put Adult Link in +1.5. We'll talk about him right now. I'd say that Adult Link gets beaten the worst because of the fact that he's slow. His up B goes super, like, doesn't go as high as the other two. But also, Steve has a pretty easy time dealing with bomb recovery, in my opinion. And just overall, I think Steve just can overwhelm Link with pressure. And he can't really do all that much. Link can't do that much against Steve kind of just camping. Like, he has fair, he has nair. But the way that Steve wins that matchup is kind of just camping. And also, that's also kind of the way that Link wins the matchup, just letting Steve mine and then waiting for Steve to overextend. But Steve can also just not approach at all when it comes to that. Now, to the other two. The other two kind of fall into the exact same thing. Oh, the fact that, like, Toon Link can two-frame Steve with F-tilt. Young Link can overall just overwhelm him with projectiles, but in that situation, he's not. He can just build a wall against both these guys and not have to approach at all. But Young Link and Toon Link are in the stand that, like, overwhelming projectiles can frustrate Steve, I'd say. But also the fact that Boomerang going through Minecart, and same with both their arrows going through Minecart is like one of the only like pros in this matchup. But also they're small, they're fast. I'd say Toon Link is also the most like hard to deal with because of how small and fast he is. But I'd say overall that they are +1 for Steve, but it can be a struggle if you don't know how to deal with overwhelming projectiles. And then I also missed a +2, which is Crom. I will talk about this right now. Crom is a matchup that I was convinced about putting a +3 on here for Crom and K. Rool, with the fact that Crom is one of the easiest characters to edgeguard in the entire game. Because of Steve down tilting, also Steve placing blocks, Crom can't get back to stage at all. And some Crom mains would be like, oh, Crom doesn't do that bad on stage. He doesn't, but at the same time, he doesn't really do so well with camping. Like, he has Fair, he has Bear, but Steve can just build another wall in rapid pace. But yeah, Crom is +2. He gets edge guarded. He gets heavily destroyed into the Steve matchup. And then I'd say another +1 in my opinion is Luigi. Luigi, for Steve, you only have to place one block. You don't gotta place two. You don't gotta place three. You only gotta place a one block wall. Luigi most of the time is gonna try to dash attack you. He's gonna try to fireball Zare you. He's gonna try to grab you. That one block destroys his entire game because he has to jump over it, and his air mobility is super duper bad in my opinion. Not in my opinion, but it's very bad. His air mobility is overall super bad. Instead, because like his jump height is very good, so like jumping up high is good, but also just his grounded speed is way better than his air speed. But Luigi just doesn't do that well against blocks. Like he has down tilt, I guess. But Zare's a good like not two frame, but like good way to kind of gimp him and Steve in a down air. But Luigi just beats Steve, like no doubt. No, not Luigi beats Steve. Steve beats Luigi, I guess, confidently, but also I feel like R0w has just a lot of Steve experience because of Akola. But I do feel like it's definitely winning for Steve in 100% in my opinion. Then I would say another +1 is just going to be, I would say, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to say that. I'm just going to rank all the Miis right now, and we'll get to them when we get to them. But I'd say Gunner's +1. Gunner is a character that likes to zone, likes to keep distance, and then you have Steve with the wall. Steve with the wall, best character in the game, makes sense. But also stone walls nullify his entire gameplay. It nullifies Gunner's entire gameplay like at all times when it comes to just neutral. Because like Gunner actually kind of has to approach where Steve kind of doesn't. I also want to say kind of doesn't. He legit doesn't have to approach like at all in that matchup. But yeah, Gunner is the zoner that can deal with Steve actually easily with overwhelming projectiles and pressure. But Steve just builds a wall, just camps, and overall just wins neutral by running away and mining. But yeah, I'd say that matchup is 100% winnable. Like, it's doable for Gunner, but it's hard. Another +1 I'd say is Meta Knight. Meta Knight, he's small, he's light, he is not easy to. It's so hard for Meta Knight to actually recover in the matchup. In that matchup, Meta Knight has a very hard time recovering because if Steve chucks out a fair whenever he's trying to uppy recover, because his uppy goes in like a swivel, so it kind of goes above ledge a little bit, so it's actually kind of easy to two-frame Meta Knight with fair as Steve. But I would say that Meta Knight just dies super easily. I do think Meta Knight does have some pros of the matchup, being the fact that neutral B going through minecart, overall, just like pressure from Meta Knight can actually be kind of hard for Steve to like run away and camp and mine. But I would say that Meta Knight doesn't definitely lose to Steve because of the fact that like he can get edge guarded. Blocks are a huge issue for Meta Knight because he kind of has a short range with his little stubby sword. He does have a sword, but it's like his only good like poking tool at blocks is down tilt. Either that or he can just go above and down B over it and just down B he can just down B like over it and then teleport into you to avoid up smash. But Meta Knight's cons are 100% outweighing the pros here. Another +1 I'd say is Roy. I feel like every Steve player has proved that against Cola. With the fact that Roy gets edge guarded super easily, and also when Steve gets in, I feel like Steve very much so can gimp Royce at super early percents with blocks, with jab loops, or just jab trains and pick loops. But I do think that Roy has a kind of a hard time when Steve is in advantage state. Roy has like when we get to the evens and minuses, you'll see a lot of the time characters have very easy ways to get out of Steve combos. Roy has none of that, and I feel like that Roy has a very hard time of dealing with blocks because he has fair, he has bear again, like a lot of characters here. But Steve overall, I would say just out pressures Roy in certain situations. Like Roy is the pressure character, but I feel like Roy can get overwhelmed by Steve kind of matching on your shield a lot of the time. But yeah, Roy does not do that good in the matchup. And then I'd say I'm just gonna put both these guys in here because I do. I would say both Duck Hunt and Diddy Kong. We're gonna start with Duck Hunt. I think Duck Hunt's that character that is weird and doesn't do that bad in every top tier. Like he does okay in the Sonic. Like he does not that terrible in the Steve, but also he beats Diddy Kong and doesn't do that bad in the Joker as well. But his frame one, he has a frame. Can comes out frame one, and I think that Can is like really shitty grenade, like snake grenade. That matchup, I feel like if Steve doesn't know how to deal with Can and also deal with Frisbee, because Frisbee, Gunman, and Can doesn't do any damage to blocks unless it's like detonated. But like the clay pigeon, that's a pretty good way to deal with blocks. Also, Gunman's a good way to deal with blocks. His recovery is the only issue I can really find in the matchup, because like when Steve gets in and then gets stuck into offstage situation, the Duck Hunt's gonna die. His recovery's so lenient that he doesn't have a hitbox on his up B. He gets blocked super easily. Like he can act out of it, but he can only act out of it once before going in special fall. Duck Hunt just overall does not do that well into Steve, just kind of camping and placing blocks at ledge. But yeah, Duck Hunt does not do that well. And then Diddy Kong's that character that whenever Aquil and Tweak thought was a +2 for Steve. I don't think it's +2 anymore. I think it's +1 because I think Tweak has shown that Steve has very vulnerable tools because Diddy Kong can deal with blocks so incredibly easily with barrels. If the Diddy Kong is at like 120, he has no repercussion of just spamming barrels at the blocks because he's gonna take 12%. But at the same time, you're gonna die to a bear like anywhere or F smash anywhere at that point anyway. So there's like no repercussion of dealing with it. But except for that, like you know what? Even though okay, you know what? I'll put Diddy Kong here. Actually, no, I'll put him back up here because yet again, blocks are very good at catching our uppy, trying to recover. Steve can kind of, I'd say Steve can use banana better than Diddy Kong can because he can get more off of it. Because Diddy Kong is only going to get like 30-40%, if not like 50-60% off of banana combos. But I'd say Diddy Kong has, I'd say, the safest and best way to deal with blocks in my opinion, which is barrels. But like barrels are like the best thing in this matchup. Banana is good, but I'd say that barrels is definitely a way better tool in that matchup. I'm going to get 2 more +1s out of the way because I kind of want to get this out of the way. Ike is another +1, and I also say both the pits are +1. Ike is kind of self-explanatory. He's slow. He's kind of like he has Crom recovery, but at the same time, he has way more range than Crom. So I think that I can deal with Steve with like Bear and Fair because Fair covers so much, and also with Steve mashing on Ike's shield, he has armor on his up B. So I do think that Ike can deal with I can deal with Steve. I can deal with Steve's pressure with up B. And also, even if Steve tries to fade away with up tilt, up B still catches that because of how huge the hitbox is, all the armor and stuff. But no, I think that Ike actually doesn't do all that bad into Steve. And then I'd say another +1 is, I'd say Falco. I'm going to put him down here. Falco gets edge guarded, I'd say, pretty easily, but also it depends on what kind of Falco you're fighting. If you're fighting combo-based Falco, it could be a struggle, but at the same time, just reset neutral by running away, placing a wall, and they're kind of forced to sit back. But if you're fighting a campy Falco, that matchup is free. Steve beats campy Falco 1000%, but I feel like combo-filled Falco is very, I'd say very easy. And not very easy, but it can be kind of difficult for Steve to deal with. But at the same time, just run away, place a wall, and kind of just camp. But that matchup is also kind of free. Now Pitt's a weird one because Pitt's kind of like a weird character of mine that I really can't beat that well. But at the same time, he has a lot of options to deal with Steve. He has Bear. Bear is a very good option. Arrow getting out of minecart. Steve dash attack on pitch shield can't do that much. Up tilt is weird because up tilt kind of makes Pitt struggle, I'd say, a lot. Just overwhelming pressure and Pitt not having the greatest out of shield option in the entire game. Like he has Nair, which is actually not that bad, but I'd say Pitt doesn't do that bad in the Steve, in my opinion, because like he has a lot of poking tools and a lot of good options against Steve. Then I'm gonna get 2 more other way. I'm gonna get for Steve. I'm gonna get Baojiao, and I'm gonna get Ness. Bowser Jr. is that character that can overwhelm the hell out of Steve with the fact that like his down B low key is very good at dealing with blocks. Like he has to be kind of far away, or he can just like go to ledge, face the other way, and pick it up, and then chuck it at blocks. But also he can chuck cannonball over blocks, and it could be because of the weird mechanic. Not a mechanic, but like weird factor that cannonball, Bowser Jr.'s cannonball, whenever it's out for a while and it drops, the dropping still has a hitbox, which I think is kind of weird. But overall, Bowser Jr.'s game plan kind of gets nullified by blocks again with like the ledge. Like being off stage against Steve as Bowser Jr., you're not gonna have a fun time. And then I think that also kind of segues into Ness. Blocks destroy Ness, but at the same time, when Ness has Steve off stage, Yo-Yo is such a good option against Elytra when Steve's coming back to stage. That matchup is Ness Steve is so weird, but it's good for Steve. I cannot doubt that. I think every Ness player also agrees. But Ness, I feel like Ness has a hard time like getting out of combos, getting back on a stage. But I also feel like that Steve prevails off of comboing Ness in disadvantage, Ness in the air, Ness off stage. Ness just overall has a very hard time just like getting backstage and landing, I'd say, against Steve. So I think that's why it's +1. And then I'd say that another +1 in the matchup is, I'm trying to think. I would say that Ken is a +1, and I'd also say that, where is he? Wait, I need to find him. There he is, Marth. And then I'll put Lucina here. I'd say Ken, Marth, and Lucina. We'll start with Ken. Ken, I feel like, does worse than Ryu in the matchup, but I also feel like just Jazo has shown what Ken can do in advantage state against Anin at Supernova. Ken is that weird character that, like, he struggles to get in your face, but when he gets in your face, you're going to take, like, 70%. Because of how Ken works, or even death off of up air chains into Shoryuken. But Ken actually has, like, I'd say a pretty good option to deal with blocks with focus. Because he can focus and then does the hit and then cancel it. And it's, like, completely safe, and he has, like, no win lag after it. He has a good way to deal with blocks. The only issue, again, like I said, with Bowser Jr. and Ness, the 2 blocks to the ledge absolutely destroy Ken, like, in every situation. And even if he tries to go above it, like, or, like, around it, he's going to get punished for it with F smash, down smash, fair. He's going to get hit by it every time. And that's also the same thing with Martha and Lucina. Martha and Lucina have pretty good range with swords. No shit. But Martha and Lucina have a much harder time dealing with blocks, like off stage again, because even Dirt beats their up B off stage and can kind of get gimped by it. But at the same time, like, counter is actually kind of hard to hit on minecart, because a lot of time as soon as Steve gets hit by the counter, he can just stay in it and go through the counter, because their counter's kind of doo-doo. It's not doo-doo, but it's also at the same time it's not that good. But I'd say that Martha and Lucina have a very hard time dealing with blocks off stage and just overall neutral. And then I would say that that's kind of it for +1s. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's it for +1s. And then, wait, I need to put echoes at the bottom. Wait, echoes here, 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 here. I should make a new tier for this. Echo fighters. Let me just get rid of all these guys. Are there any other echoes? Yep. Simon. Sans. Daisy. Dark Samus. Corn and Byleth. Elf. And then just the Pokemon trainer variants. Separate Aegis. I think. Oh, wait, the Robin alt. And then all the hero alts as well. I think that's it of alts. I think. Yeah, that's it. All right. Now, on to the +.5s. +.5s, we'll start off with Sword Fighter. Sword Fighter kind of prevents Steve from landing at all with up air, but also he has a very easy time breaking blocked with Tornado. It's a very easy way to deal with Tornado from a safe distance. And I just feel like also down tilt's a very great poking tool at blocks to get the 1 block. But at the same time, as soon as Steve gets an advantage state, he's going to beat the shit out of Sword Fighter. Sword Fighter is an underrated character in my opinion, but he's also nowhere near where, like, people say he's, like, high tier. He's, like, low mid tier at best, but Sword Fighter is that character against Steve that Steve knows how to fight because no one plays Sword Fighter. But once Steve realizes that he can kind of just sit back and camp whenever the Sword Fighter's just spamming Tornado, he kind of really can't do all that much in that matchup. But yeah, Sword Fighter is kind of just like a matchup check. And then Brawler, excuse me, I'd say Brawler kind of gets messed up by Steve in the fact that he gets jab trained. He gets edge. I'd say just like he gets kind of juggled. I'd say not really juggled, but at the same time, whenever he uses his down B, he can get kind of gimped. But I would definitely say that Brawler has a hard time. But as soon as Brawler's in advantage state, Steve can't do anything, literally anything. Shot put's a very good way to deal with Steve mining if he places his blocks wrong, because it goes through up smash. Also, shot put's a very good way to catch Steve off stage. Steve's like to be off stage when it comes to, like, some characters, because not a lot of characters can deal with it. Also, throw uppercut being frame 3, getting out of jab train super easily. And also, throw uppercut going through Anvil can be kind of a struggle whenever Steve's trying to land with Anvil. But shot put, throw uppercut, feint jump, are all very good options to get out of the corner against Steve, which Steves are most of the time very good at, and it's just a very good option to deal with. And I said another plus 0.5. I'm actually just gonna put all the I'll put two plus 0.5s, being Mario and Ryu. I feel like Asimo has proved Ryu being good in the matchup due to Shakunatsu being a great way to deal with blocks, and also Ryu being able to run through it and back air. Back air is one of the greatest options in the game to deal with minecart. Down tilt is also a pretty good 2-frame option against Steve. Again, Shakunatsu is probably the Shakunatsu, back air, down tilt, light up tilt are very good options to deal with Steve in. But Ryu overall can kind of overwhelm Steve with pressure, in my opinion. But I feel like Steve has a easy time, I'd say, comboing Ryu, because Ryu is actually kind of comboable. But I do feel like that Steve wins the matchup. But definitely it can be a struggle matchup in my opinion. And then Mario's that character that overwhelms you with pressure. And if you don't know how to DI out of his upper ladders, you are going to die as Mario. Or as Steve. Fair being able to go through minecart. Flood is a very good tool to deal with Elytra, to deal with minecart. Back air is also another very good tool. Steve also can get juggled pretty easily. But also, if Steve tries to drop an anvil, the Mario can cape and just chuck that bitch right back up at Steve. It can be a struggle matchup. I feel like this tier is like struggle matchups that some Steve players can struggle with. And I think again we're gonna go into that with Samus and Byleth. Samus is that character that Steve combos the absolute shit out of, but up tilt is destroys all 3 blocks no matter the resource every single time. Charge shot is 100% a zone breaker because Samus can up tilt and then charge shot to deal with it, because also full charge shot fully breaks 2 walls. Also goes through minecart. Also, Samus has such an easy time ledge trapping Steve because of the fact that his jump animation leaves him kind of, I'd say, a little vulnerable, more vulnerable than some characters, like obviously not like heavies, but like it's worse than Cloud, it's worse than Bayo, worse than like some other top tiers. But I definitely think that Samus has an easy time ledge trapping Steve, because a lot of times Steves are probably most of the time gonna jump off ledge, and down B kind of prevents that. But also, even if you neutral get up, Samus can kind of just charge up smash, charge down smash, and also if you're just sitting there, Samus can just up tilt you. But Samus overall has, I think, like more of a chance than what she did like 2 years ago, because Samus used to be like a +2 for Steve. I will agree with that. But also, camping in that matchup, Steve wins. If Steve's trying to approach, Samus wins, in my opinion. Actually, I don't know. I don't think Samus wins, but I do feel like it's like even. And that's where I'm kind of going like plus 0.5, because Samus has way more tools than a lot of characters to deal with walls, to deal with just Steve overwhelming pressure. Also, if Steve's up tilting on Samus' shield, Samus can just up B, and Samus has a very great out of shield option, being her up B, which is like frame 3 or 4. It's a very good tool. And then Byleth is that character that not a lot of people could deal with, and thought that like MKLeo thought that Byleth did pretty good into Steve. I don't think that Byleth does bad really bad into Steve, but I do feel like that Steve wins the matchup just because of the fact that Steve doesn't do actually that bad against tethers. Like, yes, he can't block them off, but I do feel like that Steve can kind of combo Byleth pretty easily because of how Byleth's kind of tall. So like Byleth is gonna get hit by up tilt every single time, no matter like during pick loops, and kind of get nil chained off of it. But I do think that Byleth has a lot of like good options in the matchup, like with Nair being very good. I'd say just the range of fair and back air being good. Saibi is also kind of like a weird burst option in a way, where Saibi just kind of lunges at you and kind of get you out of minecart. Arrow is a weird option as well, because it doesn't do any damage to blocks, but it's also just like a weird projectile that can kind of catch Steve off guard. And then I'd say another plus 0.5 in the matchup is Game & Watch. I feel like Akal has kind of proved this, but also Game & Watch, in my personal opinion, and this is my favorite matchup in the entire game. So if I were to go off of my personal opinion, I put him at plus 1.5. But also, I've never fought like a Meister or Mia, obviously. But I do feel like the matchup is definitely winning for Steve, and I feel like a lot of Game & Watch players will say that. Game & Watch gets comboed super easily. He's super duper light. He doesn't really have much to do with blocks. Like, he has fair. Fair is a pretty safe way of dealing with blocks, but also Game & Watch has a very easy time edge guarding Steve, in my opinion. That matchup is, in my opinion, Steve favored, but if the Game & Watch knows how to edge guard Steve and abuse Steve's habits, I think that Game & Watch can 100% make that matchup even, or, in my opinion, just overall not that good. And then next, I'm going to say the next two are going to be Kaz and Yoshi. The reason I'm putting Kaz at plus 0.5 instead of where I would have put him at plus 1 is because it entirely depends on how the Steve is playing the game. If the Steve is playing aggressive, the Kaz is going to win every single time. The way that Steve wins the matchup is by camping, because Kaz can't do much about camping. But Kaz does have Reflector, deal with Anvil and Minecart. But also, when Kaz gets in, his damage output is way better than Steve's and everything with just electrics. But also, like, Steve can kind of edge guard Kaz for free. I'd say with just 2 blocks. But he does have laser, being, like, a safer option to deal with walls. But also, electric is electric and kind of broken. So, Kaz overall, it depends on how Steve is playing. Steve's playing campy, Kaz loses. Steve's playing aggressive, Kaz wins. Yoshi's that character that Yoshidora even thinks that's like minus 0.5, which I agree with, because Steve, hold on, sorry. Steve is the character that when Steve gets Diamond into the Yoshi mashup, Yoshi legit can't double jump past ledge. Diamond Bear beats it, and it true combos into another back air. Diamond back air beats Yoshi double jump every single time, and Yoshi literally can't do anything. His air dodge is like frame 2 or 3, and even still, if you break double jump armor, he's in like lag from it being broken because of how much it breaks you with Diamond Bear. But Yoshi overall can't really go high against Steve all too well, in my opinion. So that's why I think it's plus 0.5. And then I think another matchup that is plus 0.5 is, I'm going to say Sora. Sora is a personal hatred matchup of mine. I just hate fighting Sora. But I do think that Sora does get comboed easily. He's floaty. He's kind of light. I say kind of light. He is pretty light. So he dies pretty early. He gets comboed pretty easily. But if Steve is overwhelming Sora, I feel like to an extent to where you are mining enough with 2 high block walls. And also know about the tech that if Sora hits Steve with Thundaga, if Steve holds down, Steve doesn't get by it. All 3 hits don't connect. So Sora is that character that like Steve players can 100% hate and think that's bad, but at the end of the day, that matchup is like overall good for Steve, in my opinion. And I think that Steve just overall combos Sora to oblivion and can kill him super easily. And another plus 0.5 matchup that I think I'm going to say, and probably the last one, is I'm going to say Wolf. I already know that my good practice partner, Grimtim, is going to agree with me on this. Wolf gets jab trained and also can get, I'd say, edge guarded pretty easily. Not easily, but can get edge guarded, I'd say, decently well. But then I'd say also that Wolf does have some good attributes in the matchup with back air, also being able to combo Steve, because Steve's hurtbox shifting does not exist. So he can't really get out of combos that easily, but he's a frame 3 air dodge, so it's not like the worst. But also he can up air and nair you, which I thought up air is frame 4 and nair is frame 5 or 4 or 5, I think. So he has some tools to get out of combos, but at the end of the day, it's not like Sonic or like any other character with a frame 2 air dodge. But no, Wolf definitely has some stuff that he can deal with, like Ouch beat Akola, which I think is saying something, because that matchup, low key, people thought was like pretty bad. But also Ouch did beat Syrup, I'd say, at a Reaper Invitational. Not convincingly, but definitely like they're both their sets have been game 5. So I do think that Wolf can beat Steve, but at the end of the day, I do feel like that Steve does win the matchup. And then I would say that that's about it for plus matchups. I think now it's time to move on to the even matchups. All right. I do think that an even matchup, I'm gonna get away with two matchups that I do feel like that people will agree with me with, and that's Terry and Wario. Gluto has proved that Wario does not do bad into Steve whatsoever. So has Crepsole. Crepsole almost reverse 3-0ing Aquila. And Wario's speed with like Bear beating Minecart, also F tilt being a good way to two frame Steve, and overall just Wario. I feel like Wario just has very good poking tools with down tilt, with nair, with up air. Wario just overall just I think does pretty good and is even in neutral, in my opinion. So I think that's why I'm putting Wario in even. And then Terry, in my opinion, Terry is that character that Terry deals with blocks so easily. F tilt crack shoot beats blocks and also it's such a good burst option for Steve to do. It's a hard burst option for Steve to deal with, in my opinion. And I do think that Terry is even also just because of the pressure, the way that he can deal with Steven Minecart with Nair and also Dare, and then side B as well. He has good burst options. He has like no landing lag on power dunk. It's very hard to punish Terry landing on. It's very hard as Steve to punish Terry landing on your shield or hitting your shield, unless he makes a mistake with like a misinput power dunk or like a misinput side B or the whatever. I don't know what's called, but Terry also gets beaten off stage. I'd say pretty easily, but overall, Terry has a lot of options. That's in a lot of pressure that Steve can't deal with that much. Shield pressure. Again, Steve isn't the greatest character when it comes to being on shield, but I do think that Terry Steve is even. Another matchup I do think that is even. Or I'm gonna do the next two. I think Wii Fit is even, and I think that Lucario is even. I think that first I'll start with Wii Fit. I feel like Wii Fit is one of the weirdest characters in the game because she is playing her own game. She has header and deep breathing. Deep breathing makes this matchup even. If deep breathing wasn't as good as it was, it'd be plus 0.5 plus 1. But she has some of the greatest, like she has no disjoints, which is kind of bad. But also if Steve hits Wii Fit shield with a bear and Wii Fit's facing away from Steve, she can back air him to an oblivion in that match because Bear is actually pretty fast and actually not a bad out of shield option. Soccer balls also can kind of be kind of a bad way, like a annoying for Steve. With that, also I think fair is a very good way to deal with Steve minecarting a lot. Also, so is back air, but also the fact that in that matchup, the more that Steve camps, the more the Wii Fit heals with deep breathing and sun salutation. But yeah, the more that Steve camps, the more percent that Wii Fit actually heals back in the matchup. But I do feel like that Steve can edge guard Wii Fit like kind of decent with blocks, because hula hoops break like wood, they break dirt. Stone can be kind of tricky, but at the same time she can stall with header and deep breathing a little bit. Not deep breathing, but most time just header and wait till the blocks disappear a little bit. Like she can header and then up air the blocks and then recover to try to like kind of wait out for the blocks to disappear. Or she can also kind of go around it, but at the same time, going around it's never the option against those blocks. It's most time just breaking in and recovering low. But I believe it's the weird character that I do feel like is even. And then Lucario, Steve beats Lucario, and then as soon as Lucario gets to 70-80%, the matchup becomes even. If not, like, good for Lucario. Aura Sphere is one of the best options to do with blocks. Side B going through blocks, dealing with minecart super well, having so much range that Steve really can't approach Lucario whenever he has like 100 aura. He can't approach that well. Good Cheapy has beaten like 33 parent box, has beaten Rocky, has beaten like a lot of top Steve players with Lucario. Has also beaten Mia, I will say that. But I do feel like that Lucario has, whenever he has aura, has a lot of options. But whenever he doesn't have aura, Steve wins the matchup. But at the same time, he's gonna get aura no matter what. But also he just prevents Steve from camping. Also, with the 2 blocks at ledge, Lucario can just swoop around it and grab ledge, which is also very good in the Steve matchup. Because he can swoop around, grab ledge, break a block, so he actually can grab ledge. But even if he doesn't, he can just go around and bonk. And the bounce, when the landing of the bounce, if you get the bounce, the landing has no end lag, so he can just shield any Steve shit and just like side B command grab him. But Lucario just has a lot of options with aura to do with Steve, in my opinion. Another matchup that I think is even is I'll do the next two. I think is Palu and Bayo. Palu has a lot of options in neutral. Back air is overall her best move in the matchup. Being one of the best ways to deal with blocks. Dealing with minecart super easily. Edge guard, like it's one of the best edge guarding tools in the game against Steve because of the iframes on her entire back and arm. But Palu is just overall like heavy movement character. Like when the Palu is moving and it's battlefield, the Palu is gonna most time give Steve a hard time. Walls are also a very hard thing for Palu to deal with when it comes to just recovering because blocks beep, teleport. Like if Steve just builds like a giant thing around the ledge, Palu really can't do that much because her teleport sucks. But on stage and her advantage state overall makes the matchup even. So Bayo's the character where if Steve is camping, he wins the matchup. If he's playing aggressive, he loses the matchup because Bayo gets hit once, or Bayo hits Steve once, and 100% beats Steve. I feel like that Bayo can make the Steve very frustrated and mentally not want to camp because he just wants to get in and get retaliation for the damage that he just took. But the way you win the matchup is just camping. But also, that's why I think it's even because Bayo can also sit off stage for 8,000 years and wait for blocks to disappear on ledge and not get gimped by it. But also, down smash is a very good way to beat ABK. Also, Steve, if the Bayos love to do the jump, the short hop, instant ABK, but Steve can crouch under that and up smash it to punish it. But Steve, I feel like can struggle a lot. Back air going through minecart as well. Minecart is not that safe of an option against all these characters, but I do feel like that Steve Bayo is even, in my opinion. Excuse me. And then I'll go with 2 more because wait, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a few. I think that Corrin and Hero are even. A lot of these even matchups also can be 100,000% struggle matchups for Steve. Corrin and Hero are definitely some of those. Corrin having such great range. Also, F Smash being able to go through blocks if you're close enough and hit Steve. In my opinion, Corrin just has so much range for Steve to deal with. Side B at the ledge is very good at catching Elytra. Back air being able to auto space when after hitting Steve's shield, so he can't punish you for it. I think Corrin just has so much range that it's so hard for Steve to actually deal with, in my opinion. And then Hero is kind of the same, where like Steve can't up tilt Hero's shield for free because of up B. Up B comes out frame 4, and Hero can also punish it, or not punish it, but can combo out of it if he lands on a platform. But also characters with huge hitboxes that are like that last a long time, I think do pretty good into Steve. Like I do, like Hero's Fair, Hero's Bear. They do so much damage. They cover so much area. Great out of shield option against Steve, but also Kaboom is very good against Steve. All the fast projectiles that he does. Bounce completely gets rid of down throw, gets down smash, down tilt, down air, and also just does so much into Steve. It cancels out so much of his shit. Cancels minecart. Steve has to play a completely different game whenever the Hero has bounce. But Hero has so many projectiles and so many good options against Steve. But also it's Steve. So at the end of the day, you're going to be doing pretty good against Hero with like just outplaying them in the matchup. And then a character I think that there's gonna be a few, but I think that Greninja is even, and I think that Joker is even. Greninja is an even because Greninja overwhelms Steve with pressure. Water Shuriken is a very great projectile to deal with blocks. Also, the fact that he's always in a crouched position, like for his idle animation, it's running up tilt doesn't hit unless it's like the back. If it's the back of Steve, up tilt hits. If it's the front, if Greninja's the front of Steve, up tilt doesn't hit. But Greninja, he's just very like small. He's very slippery, I would say in a way, where like the pressure that Greninja can put on a Steve is so insane that Greninja, if someone said that, if a Steve said Greninja was minus for Steve, I would disagree with him. But like, it's just hard for Steve to deal with Greninja's pressure. But again, Steve has some cons in the matchup with like blocks again at the ledge, blocking Hydro Pump, but Greninja can go around it actually pretty well. Shadow Sneak also is a good way to prevent blocks on the ledge because it just stops, but also you gotta angle it right to where it actually hits the blocks and you don't land on top of them. But I think if the Greninja is playing well and spaces against blocks pretty well, I do think that Greninja can do a lot of stuff, and this is like a personal matchup I think is even. Joker, I feel like is a character that I feel like Steve players have always struggled against, but I feel like more even that like people have watched on and beat the shit out of Leo's Joker to prove that the matchup is even. Joker Arsene is the winning factor in that matchup. Backer is a very good option to get Steve out of minecart to make him stop mashing to deal with blocks. And also Gun is another great way to deal with blocks. Side B is another way to stop Steve from camping so much, especially with Arsene. That shit lasts forever. But no, Joker overall can just win neutral against Steve, I think, pretty well, in my opinion. But overall, that matchup's even because Steve also can combo Joker kind of well, can kill him pretty early because of his medium weight. But I do feel like Joker is definitely an even matchup in my opinion. And then I will say that I only have 2 more even matchups. I will say that the last 2 are Pikachu, not Pikachu, Peach, and where is he? Sephiroth. Peach is a character that heavily relies on getting in your face with turnips and landing a lot of in-your-face moves. Peach can, here's the thing, in the matchup where Steve is just camping, Peach can just pull turnips and chuck them at blocks. It's a very good way to deal with blocks. But also, whenever Steve is just like spamming, she can use Toad to deal with Bear. Toad is one of the best options to deal with Bear. Like, it's also a good way to catch Elytra, because Elytra has a hitbox. If Toad catches Steve's Elytra trying to recover, it's a very, very good way to deal with Steve recovering. But Peach overall just overwhelms Steve with turnips, with float cancels. But because if Steve doesn't know how to fight Peach and deal with the floatiness of Peach, Steve is going to lose from overwhelming pressure of Peach because she can get in your face, and when she gets in your face, you're going to take so much percent, if not death. Now, Sephiroth is kind of the opposite. Seth wants to keep away from Steve and keep space in the matchup to where he has enough space to space his aerial, space bear, space fair. And also, Seth has one of the best 2-frame options on Steve, being down tilt. Down tilt is so good against Steve. It true combos into Nair for some reason at lower percents or low and medium percents. But Tweak used to play Seth to counter Aquila Steve. And I do feel like that Steve can win the matchup. Seth, in my opinion, is even. But the factor that makes it even, if not almost plus 0.5, is the fact that Steve kills Seth so incredibly early, in my opinion. I don't think that it's funny. It is insane about how crazy that Seth dies to Steve. Because, like, one grab combo, Seth dies. But in neutral, I feel like Seth actually doesn't do that bad with space. If Seth spaces his fairs and bears properly, I do think that Steve can struggle a little bit to actually get in. So A matchup. Okay, I do have two more matchups that I think are even. Actually, oh god, I don't know if I should pick like. I'm not sure. You know what? I'll just do even. I do think that Shulk and Rob. Shulk and Rob are no, not Shulk and Rob. Shulk and Pokemon Trainer. Shulk is that character that has so much range with Fair, with Nair, can overwhelm Steve, and has Fair is one of the best ways to deal with blocks, especially with being able to Fair and then instantly shield Monado up against blocks and not go anywhere against Steve. Also being able to Monado through Steve combos. Steve can, what he can do is just, if he's in shield Monado, just spam up tilt, and it overall just works, and he does so much percent. But neutral Steve can struggle very easily with the amount of range that Shulk has in the matchup, and Shulk being able to just space himself really well, being able to use all the Monado arts super well, speed to get in his face, smash to kill him super easily, Buster to combo Steve, because Steve is actually kind of comboable because of no hurtbox shifting, and also not being able to angle his shield. But Steve overall can do good in the matchup, but I feel like that Shulk can be a struggle matchup. Same with Pokemon Trainer. Pokemon Trainer, the only one that beats Steve, in my opinion, or like can make Steve struggle super easily, is Ivysaur. Ivysaur has such an easy time juggling Steve with up air, down air, like two framing Steve with dare, and also just Razor Leaf being such a great option to deal with blocks. And then also just Nair being a great landing option on shield, because it's actually pretty safe on shield. Up, like, Steve, Ivysaur being able to edge guard Steve is very good. Squirtle is actually also not that bad of a matchup with like an advantage state, but also I would say that Steve is +1 on Squirtle, and I would say he's plus 1.5 on Charizard. Charizard is he's fat, but the only thing that he has from being +2 is, well, he's fast, and he actually has like good options to get Steve out of Minecart. Oh, sorry, I was trying to think of the name. Flamethrower is also a good option to deal with Elytra to get back to the ledge. So I do feel like Zard has some options, and so does Squirtle, but Steve's advantage state is overall way too good for either of them to deal with, in my opinion, because I do feel like that Steve advantage state is one of the best advantage states in the game, if not one of the best. But Ivysaur is the reason why this matchup is even, in my opinion, if not like minus, because Ivysaur low-key, not low-key, but high-key beats Steve, in my opinion. Like, I'd put Ivysaur at -0.5. Now, time to get to losing matchups. We don't have many, but there might be some that might shock you, in my opinion, which I don't disagree with that. But in my opinion, I think Steve definitely can lose a lot of matchups. And I think that some abstract ones that we can get out of the way are Mega Man and Olimar. I think Mega Man and Olimar definitely beat Steve, but it's in a weird way. Like, Shuton has proven that Olimar can beat the shit out of Steve, and I do think that Syrup also agrees that Olimar beats Steve. But I do think that Steve definitely loses to Olimar. Not definitely, but like -0.5. Steve has to play super duper weird against Olimar. He has to do a 2-block wall strat to actually deal with Pikmin efficiently, because of how so easily he can make blocks vanish with Fair and Bear so easily, because he can Fair fade back super easily. He's also really small, so he's kind of hard to combo. But he dies super early, which is actually kind of good. But except for that, I think that Olimar beats Steve in just in neutral, with all the Pikmin being tossed everywhere, with him being able to just break blocks super easily, and making Steve have to do 2-block walls instead of 3. I just think Olimar overall wins neutral against Steve. Mega Man is that character that I think also Peanut 3-0ing on and kind of proves this. Mega Man has so many tools to deal with Steve trying to recover, and also him trying to land. If Steve is landing with an anvil, and that Mega Man up airs to Steve, he is most likely going to die. Because up air going through anvil, and then just lifting Steve up into the abyss. But here's the thing, if Steve just air dodges as well, that up air catches that air dodge too. Mega Man has so many tools with Side B, with Blade B, or with Beyblade. Back air is a very great tool for killing Steve. And also, Leaf Shield is so good at breaking blocks. You do Leaf Shield on that wall for a second and then jump to break it all and jump away. It's so good at breaking blocks. It is overall really good. Also, Mega Man going high, Steve can't do anything about Mega Man going high because he can just dare to kind of stall him a little bit, and it completely throws off the mix of Steve's entire neutral. And then I think two more -0.5s are Rob, Pikachu. Rob is self-explanatory. Gyro is the winning factor in that matchup. Gyro is very good. Nair is very good. Nair is, in my opinion, like top 5 best ways to deal with blocks. It's safe. It's safe to land with. Rob can cancel Steve's combo with Z drop, Z drop, just Z drop out of combos with Gyro in hand. Also, Steve can't really do much about laser because how big it is, and Gyro. Rob can just also kind of just overwhelm Steve with pressure in everything, and I just feel like overall pressure Rob does pretty good. Pikachu, on the other hand, is the opposite. Pikachu can camp way better than Steve. He can go understage forever. He can just sit there and not even do anything. But Pikachu Thunder Drills, the reason that Pikachu's in +2, and in my opinion, that Pikachu's -0.5, is that Pikachu T-Jolts go over blocks and trace over them, to where Steve has to place a very specific block pattern to actually deal with blocks. It's 2 here, no corner, 2 like this. It's very weird and actually kind of hard to actually get down consistently. But once you get it down, you can kind of just sit in there. But at the same time, Pikachu can just F-Smash through it. I don't know why Shiny Mark doesn't F-Smash. I mean, he's gotten punched like twice for it against Anin. But Shiny Mark overall is the main reason why I think this matchup is -0.5. And then I think the final -0.5 matchup for Steve is Aegis. The main reason that people might think this matchup is bad is Mythra, because she's fast, she can kind of cancel Steve from mining. No, this matchup, in my opinion, would be even if Mythra didn't exist. If it was just Pyra, I think this matchup would be even. I think Mythra is +0.5. Steve jab trains Mythra and can kind of kill Mythra pretty easily and kind of early. But Pyra, on the other hand, I think that Pyra is kind of hard for Steve to deal with. I think, like I said, Steve struggles with characters that have long hits that last for a while, like Pyra. Pyra has very strong range. Also, the fact that people think that, like, the fact that Aegis was a character that, like, Mythra has, like, no end lag, is fast, and does the damage. Pyra kills with a lot of end lag. Pyra does not have that much end lag, and Pyra can overwhelm Steve a lot, and also like up air going through Anvil is very good. Down tilt up air killing pretty early. Also, Fair and Bear destroying Steve out of minecart. If the Steve is kind of mashing minecart, is actually insane. Overall, Pyra is the winning factor in that matchup. And then I don't really gotta like hype these up because of the last 5 characters. But actually, you know what? I'll put Sonic here. My main reasoning for Sonic being -0.5 instead of -1, Sonic is the character that I think Steve has gotten better against. Because of the fact that Steve can just camp way better than Sonic can. In that matchup specifically, Sonic overall camps the whole rest of the cast better. But in that matchup, I feel like Steve gets one advantage state in that matchup, and Sonic loses his stock. So if Sonic is not playing aggressive and overwhelming Steve with pressure, Steve wins the matchup. 100%. But when Steve is trying to mine and Sonic is just breaking walls super duper easily, Steve loses the matchup. Because it's so much pressure that Steve can't really deal with. And Sonic overall can just as soon as Steve is in a disadvantage state, he can capitalize off that, doing 90% and getting him in an off-stage situation, which can just lead to a kill with homing attack back air. Sonic overall just beats the shit out of Steve. And the final 4, which I think are -1s, are Cloud, Min, Snake, ZSS. Cloud is self-explanatory because of Spargo. Cloud has back air. Cloud has so much range that Steve can't deal with. Also, Cloud back air is top 3 best ways to deal with blocks, in my opinion. Very good way to deal with blocks. I think that Steve can't really be mashing, and also the only way that Steve can win the matchup against Cloud is by playing aggressive and calculated, and also just chucking him off stage and edge guarding him. At the same time, it's very hard, especially when he has a limit, and he's very fast, and also as soon as he whiffs a grab, he's going to take so much % off of that. But Cloud overall wins the matchup off of speed, off of range, off of safe options on Steve's shield and blocks. But Steve overall loses to Cloud. It's, in my opinion, if not close to his worst matchup. Now, Min, on the other hand, is a -1 in my opinion. I think a lot of people will say Steve, Min's -0.5 instead of -1, but sorry. I think that Min is a very tough character for Steve to deal with. Every other Steve that isn't Aquila struggles with Doromigi because of the fact that, we also don't have Min here in the States, but they do in Japan pretty well, and that's why Aquila does actually pretty good into Doromigi. I think their set count is 12-2 or something, or 12-4 or something. But in my opinion, I think that Min just keeps super well distanced against Steve. Min kind of forces Steve to not be able to camp because of how fast she breaks blocks. And also, if Min spaces the Dragon Arm well, the laser goes through blocks. It's a very easy way to deal with blocks as a whole with Megawatt. Min just keeps a very good range, and all the hits last forever, and also Reflector on Anvil kills so early. Snake is also another easy one to kind of see. Grenade frame 1 getting out Steve combos, and Hurt kind of proving that against Aquila, being, I think, 4-0 on sets last season against Aquila without dropping a single game. But Snake is that matchup that Steve struggles against so much because Steve can't mash. Steve likes to mash on people. But against Snake, you can't do that because he has Grenade, he has C4, he has so many options that nullifies Steve gameplay. Literally just as a whole with mashing and up tilting on shield. Snake just has so many options to deal with that and getting out of combos and such. Now, in my opinion, Steve's worst matchup is ESS. Steve, as a whole, struggles against characters with great movement options, like Cloud with Limit, Sonic, Pikachu, Aegis with Mithra, and also Palu, in my opinion. And ZSS is definitely that character. Flip Kick is bullshit. But no, I do think that Flip Kick is a very good option to get away from ledge against Steve, because that's where Steve thrives. ZSS also counters Steve neutral heavily, in my opinion, with just Nair, Zair. Zair being able to, if Steve only does 2 blocks over against platform, Zair can go through and hit Steve and kind of nullify his thinking about mining and playing, and also just thinking that ZSS can overwhelm Steve with Zair, with side B. Side B going through blocks is a very good option against blocks because it surprises the Steve. It also sends it, if it only hits the last, or the last hit of the comeback, it sends Steve towards ZSS and she can get a true back air off of it. But ZSS overwhelms Steve with pressure, overwhelms Steve with literally everything. But I do think that Steve's worst matchup is ZSS over just about overwhelming pressure, and Steve really can't get out disadvantage that well against ZSS. So I do think that Steve's worst matchup is ZSS, but also I do think that Snake, Min, and Cloud are all definitely up there. So if y'all want to take a picture of this, go ahead. I didn't cover any of the actual matchups with my screen. I only covered the echoes. So if you're wondering what that is, it's just Echo Fighters. But this is my final matchup chart. If y'all like this video and want me to make one for DK as well, because I do play DK quite a lot, and K-Rool. If y'all want to make that tier list, if you want me to make that tier list, if y'all want me to do anything similar to this, and y'all want more long-form content, make sure to like and subscribe. I love all y'all so much. Thank you so much. Dream on forever. Thank you all. I love you all so much. Bye-bye.